Welcome everybody back to Segal Talks here at the Martini Segal Theater Center at the Graduate Center, CUNY. It is our third week where we hear from artists and actually listen to them and their voices in this time of Corona, this time where the reality is truly stranger than fiction, and within a very, very short time, things have moved in directions nobody ever could have thought. I'm sure not the last time we all saw each other here in New York. We had participants from all over the world, from Lebanon and Egypt, Taiwan, Hong Kong, China, from Germany and Italy and everywhere. And so we're taking the temperature to see, how does it feel like being at home for an artist, for a theater artist? How is this mood in the streets in the city? What is on artists' mind, theater artists' mind? We hear so much from politicians and economic advisors and neurologists, but this is a time, if ever, we need to hear from the arts. I feel it is now. And often, very, very often, theater artists and artists are the ones who are right when it comes to history. So we get an update now from New York City. New York has over 10,000 dead people. It has more. New York State of New York. So we have more dead people than most countries, or every country in the world. It's of course 5.5 million people. You have used the subway every day. 3,000 people coming out of Penn Station. People living close to each other. And here in New York, we do love to go out and party and create, work together and talk and communicate. And this time, this all works in a way against us. And so with us, we have today two groups who are the bedrock in a way also of New York City's theater, of the experimental scene, of the scene that really is creating work that doesn't replicate what's already there, that doesn't do adaptations of what we already know about. They have been disruptors. They have created things that are new. And we always use that old Brecht quote to say new times need new forms of theater. And I guess we all live in a new time, like there was before and after World War II, before and after Berlin Wall opened, perhaps before and after 9/11, and now we have this. So theater people are, normally we do complain there's no space, we don't have money, there's not possible to do work. Now there is really no space to do work. There is really no money for a long time, but still we are with us, and we are always inside the same. That's what Gertrude Stein said. From early age on, we are actually who we are. So I would love to hear from you, and maybe we start with NEB. How are you, and how is NEB doing? The choreographer and the co-director and co-founder of Big Dance Theater, and who have here with us with Paul Lazar, and of course, Kelly Cooper and Pavol from the great Nature Theater of Oklahoma. But Annie, what's going on?
Oh gosh. Well, I suppose I'm a little speechless because the issue, there's a lot of language that's come up around this experience that we're having that's new or is very choreographic, and because so much is going on, and it's emphasized in this tragedy about the haves and the have-nots, I feel a little hesitant to speak informal terms, really. But because that's my business, it does occur to me every day that there's a lot of choreographic language flying around, a lot of body awareness, spatial awareness, issues of presence. 6 feet, for instance, distance, where people are getting really good at that. And as a choreographer, of course, I find that interesting. It's one of my really favorite proximities. I find that really elegant, 6 feet. Issues of the body and space, distancing, separation, these are all choreographic ideas that everybody's now having to deal with. And I do feel funny talking about formal structural things in the face of so much suffering. But, on a personal level, I'm lucky to be fine. I turned down a lot of teaching work in order to get in a room with some sweaty bodies and rehearse, which obviously isn't happening. So, it's okay. I feel like it's okay not to generate tons of quick videos and stuff, and just, you know, kind of be here now.
So where are you now in your apartment? Where is it in New York City?
We're in Brooklyn. Yeah. Where?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I live in Cobble Hill, and it's, you know, pretty much, I guess, like everywhere else, you know, people walking out to take walks and then coming out at 7 p.m. to do the most beautiful art piece ever imagined, political art piece of compassion, the group clap.
Mm-hmm. So you participate in it, and
yeah, every night. We really look forward to it.
yeah, yeah. So how is the mood on the street in Brooklyn? What do you see?
Wow. People don't, I feel like, pay enough attention to the protocols that are being suggested or supposed to be implemented by the mayor. You see like 50% of people wearing masks, people dodging each other. That dance of getting around each other is happening a little bit, but I wish it was happening more. And it's pretty quiet. And the air, I mean, the silver lining is the air is beautiful.
Yeah, no cars.
No cars, no industry.
No pollution. Yeah, Kelly, where are you now, and how does it feel for you?
I'm out in Long Island City in Queens. So the place where we live is kind of more of an industrial area. There, so I noticed I can hear birds and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, so that's nice. And it's funny, I didn't think so much about the body spacing and things like that, and people having to be aware of other bodies in space. But for me, I can't stand the masks. I miss being able to read faces. I find I don't really know, I don't really know how to interact very well without faces. It's hard to read eyes, and people are covered up. Some of them, like, you know, Pavol saw the other day, like people wearing 2 or 3 layers of masks. You know, I guess I just realized that, like, so much of the expression that people have is below their nose, and I miss that. I miss being able to see people smile, or to know how they're taking whatever I'm saying, or but I've become much more aware of the animal life and things like that. We have some beautiful bird song that I've never heard before. And I really enjoy people use their dogs as an excuse to get outside. And I've been taking, my way to get through all of this really has been to take really long walks through the city. So I walk sometimes 3-4 hours at a stretch, just to get out. And we also installed we had a walking treadmill that we bought a while ago to walk and write at the same time. And that has come in real handy too on days when you just can't get out. I just miss being able to move.
Mm-hmm. So where do you walk, and what do you think about when you're walking?
For me, it's just like, I miss like the information. So it's been nice to like see the leaves coming out and the flowers. Right now is tulip season, so there's all this color all of a sudden. Also to notice, I mean, I started walking really like around March 13th. And at first people were much closer together, and now sometimes I walk and I barely see anyone, and there's no cars. So it's just gotten much more stark. And I walk from Queens, usually over the Pulaski Bridge into Brooklyn, over the Williamsburg Bridge, through Manhattan, and back over the Queensboro Bridge is one of my favorites. It's just a nice loop, and it takes you through 3 boroughs. So.
Yeah, and it's things you notice in the city, things that are different. Next to the
Definitely.
obvious. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the sirens. I noticed I saw a lot of fire trucks and things like that, and then I read that it was because people were people who had never cooked before are cooking, and there's a lot of house fires, I guess, are up too, because we're not very good cooks in New York.
Yeah.
So,
Olive oil in flames. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, and I've noticed that when I do have to get out, I have a motorcycle, and so sometimes I get on the road to go get groceries or toilet paper or something, and I notice that people are much more free and easy about at least the traffic laws. Like I saw one guy pulled up next to me, stopped at the stoplight, and then just blew through. It's just, I think there's a little bit of a, as we get into more and more weeks of this, of a like, what the hell kind of attitude. And a friend of mine who lives in Midtown said that there's like a lot of drag racing and stuff late at night.
Oh.
So I'm interested in the, like what's the progression of lawlessness, because as much as, Annie B said that people aren't really following the protocol, and I have a little trouble with it too. I mean, I know it's good and we've got to follow the rules and stuff, but like everything in my artwork is kind of about like figuring out what the rules are and breaking them. So I chafe a little bit at all of the rules, and it's interesting to see how people respond to like such a more hardcore structure for social experience. And I don't think it's good that people are blowing through the red lights and stuff, but it is interesting to see the choices that people make, and at what point their risk versus reward kind of trips over, and they start being more reckless.
So Pavel, what do you do? And especially when Kelly is off with her motorcycle or something, how is it in being confined? You are also a group that, you work so much in Europe, one of the few also New York groups that does tour and has such a global reach in a way. How does it feel to be in the apartment?
It feels the same as it always does, because when we are in New York, generally I stay inside the apartment constantly. The food is delivered, and I never leave, sometimes for weeks at a time. So it's exactly the same. But I was in Europe during the outbreak, and I was in Slovakia, and then the border was closed in Slovakia. Then I had a flight out of Vienna. And so I would be able to leave Slovakia, but not come back. But then the next day, Austrians closed the border. So I couldn't leave Slovakia and go into Austria. So my sister and brother dropped me off at a field on the border, and I walked across the field 10 kilometers with my suitcases to the nearest town. So it just felt like Cold War, when people were immigrating from Eastern Europe. So I was able to see also the differences between how former communist countries deal with the virus and here. I think I read somewhere that the Eastern European countries have been able to contain the pandemic a little bit better than the Western countries, because I think the people are used to obeying. So and also telling on each other. So when somebody is disobeying the rules, either they report them, or everybody just is used to receiving orders from the government and just doing what they're told. And so maybe that's one advantage of living in a totalitarian regime, is that you learn how to obey. But like Kelly said, I love wearing the mask, because we found these masks in Asia one time years ago that say "okay" on it. So it's a great swag, but it's hard to breathe. But nothing has really changed for me, other than just the awareness of or just the knowing what's going on in the world, and how, and we're working on a new project that's somewhat related, or just thinking how to you know, how do we get back together, especially now, just worrying about not worrying about it existentially, that, oh shit, we won't be able to make our stupid little show, but just, are we ever going to be able to get back together and be in close proximity with other human beings, which is really what the work is about. You know, it's not about making little TV shows for the internet. You know, that is not what we do. What we do is really a social experience. So all of this is really endangering our reason for making any kind of work. It's not just what's on the screen or what's on stage, but we really care about what's actually happening in the audience. Our theater is going to be rearranged in the way that people are seated. You know, is there going to have to be every, you know, 2/3 of all the seats in the theaters, will they have to be removed so that there's enough distance between everyone? Is everyone, before they can enter a theater, going to have to show proof that they don't have any disease that can infect everybody else in the theater? Is there going to have to be some kind of a plexiglass barrier in front of the stage separating the audience?
Sounds like Richard Foreman.
Exactly, that's what I thought. It's like, wow, Richard could do his shows right now, and it would be all
Great.
oh, great. And just but then thinking also is what kind of, if the giant theaters can never reopen, which is fine. I never really, unless I went to see Balanchine with Annie B.
Couple times.
Yeah, and other than that, I never really go to big theaters. I just go with Annie B. Are we going to start having kind of secret dissident performances in our apartments or in the basements? Is the experimental or avant-garde work going to really take on much bigger importance than it has had in the last years? Do we stage things in people's apartments? You know, which to me is an exciting prospect, because I do feel that unless we are able to get people into the same space, that the work that we do is meaningless, at least to me. You know, I'd rather just then write novels, because I'm not really interested in creating content for the internet or making television shows.
Paul, what comes to your mind?
What comes to my mind?
Yeah, when you hear your of course your partner, but also your friends, and being in New York City, being in your apartment.
Yeah.
What is on your mind? Yeah.
The rhythm of this conversation is kind of cool. The way that because of the constraint of the technology, we're talking way differently than we would if the five of us were hanging out. We'd do that New York thing of kind of blabbing on top of each other. So I'm digging the formality of this conversation. That, you know, formality imposed by this authentic constraint of the technology will get all fucked up if we talk at once, makes us each hold forth in this separate way. And I'm hearing aspects of everybody that I probably would not be that aware of if we didn't say, okay, now it's your turn to say your thoughts, you know?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And you're at the end of the, yeah.
Yeah, right. So I got, as each person talked, and they were all so cool and smart, I got more and more nervous with each, with each
We
one.
can take off our shirts.
Woo, woo. That's kind of standard use of video, I think. But it could be lucrative.
How is it for you as a creative mind, you know, as a thinker, or you're a thinker of theater, as everybody here, you know, and what does it do to you?
Well, it was, I kind of lucked out in that, and you know, my company has been around about 26, some huge amount of time. So as a great desire was gradually accumulating in me to be by myself. And so starting a few years back, I started to make this solo called Cage Shuffle, where I put all these John Cage 1-minute stories on my, as a playlist on my iPod, and I speak them as I hear them. And I do a dance at the same time. And the Cage stories come in random order, so how they match up with the dance is different with every performance. And it required to do that, it's a bit of a pat your stomach and rub your head type thing to the max. So to create this piece, I had to spend a lot of time alone in my house. And so I was already in the mode of working by myself for a couple of years, having made Cage Shuffle, and I had just agreed to do the Cage Shuffle marathon, where I'm going to do 90 of these 1-minute Cage stories, which requires 90 minutes of dance. So I have more than enough to do by myself in a room. So on that level, it's sort of like Pavol was saying, is what else is new? You know what I mean? It's business as usual in that sense. But the difference is, well, you can't dance by yourself alone in a room without killing your hip, my left hip, that is, for more than a couple hours max. So the rest of the time, Annie and I were making masks. We had a sewing machine, but it broke. So now we're down to sewing by hand. So we're moving backwards to the, you know, medieval technologies, and reading way more. I had this funny marriage of two things that seem disparate and then end up being so in concert with one another. What I mean is, and this is going to sound very highfalutin, but I happen to be reading Antony and Cleopatra, and I never knew Cleopatra is such a fucking she's outrageous. I mean, I think that one of these wonderful drag queens like Taylor Mack could inhabit Cleopatra. She is just out of control. Harold Bloom says exuberant narcissism, which is, I think, so beautiful. Anyway, I'm reading that and I'm watching this documentary about Irene Forness and this thing of exuberant narcissism is just very prevalent in my mind, and how thrilling that is when the exuberant narcissism is manifest in somebody like Irene Forness, or, you know, certain artists can, or politicians or personalities can exhibit exuberant narcissism in a rather thrilling way.
One question, if I may ask, you both are also couples, creative couples, you know, like Judith Molina or Julian Beck or Mario Martinelli, who we had here on with Hermana Montanari from Italy. And how is it you already work together, but now you are confined, you can go out. Does it have an effect on your life, or is it a time you say this is something we normally don't have? How is that working for you all?
Nobody's answering. I think Annie can field that one.
Well, Paul mentioned that Paul mentioned that he's working on dances for his piece. And the first iteration of the piece, I had choreographed the first 30 minutes of the dance. It's his piece, but he asked me for choreography. So I would just give him these 1-minute segments of, and I know Pavel's a choreographer too, so I'm curious how he feels about this. But now I literally can't even touch it. Like, I don't want to make dance right now. I don't want to think about like that whole enterprise. And I think it's a little bit because of what Pavel's saying of just like, I need to be in a room. I need to like really, I need the whole thing. I need my dancers in the room. I need, to know how long I have. I need to prepare. I need to, and right now it's just, everything feels very liminal and floaty. And I am working on some projects on my own, but they're not choreography. But vis-a-vis the couple thing, I think we're working separately, pretty much, wouldn't you say? We read a play together yesterday, but mostly we're working separately. Yeah, strangely enough. How about you guys?
We're writing the new text for the new show, and Kelly writes something, gives it to me. I go over it, give it back to her, and we just pass it back and forth, and we read, and we, it is what we do for 90% of the year is solitary work anyway. It's not so it's just the payoff that is being threatened. Everything else really is how we work. And
Yeah, and sometimes
we're always in the same, for the most part, apartment, and we don't really, it's not a change other than the content.
What were you saying, Kelly?
Oh, just like I think anybody that works together as a couple making theater, it's like sometimes you're on top of each other in a hotel room or like in a plane, you spend a lot of intense time together like this. And so in that way, it's really like, if you manage, it's because you have some strategies for getting through this kind of intensely,
like 4-hour walks.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's great to get out and give each other a little space if you can.
Yeah.
I guess from having made so much work together, these two couples, that is, maybe we're more prepared for this collective quarantine than people that don't work together.
Yeah. I would really do think so. And it's one of the sad things in the Corona time that we all do think, people go back to their families and their partners and they stay at home, but a lot of people do not have partners or families, are not married, and they can't see each other. They don't get in France or Italy, they cannot visit each other because they're not formally married, or maybe people have multiple partners. And so it's a very, very complicated time for many people next to others. How is it for you work-wise? Have your commissions been stable?
Well, actually, there's one thing I wanted to mention.
Yeah.
That's related, but not exactly, which is that I think that out of a legitimate fear, which is like, as Pavel said, the commissions, or the thing that's being threatened is having a future, having, gigs, and being in the game when all this passes, still having a platform, I guess is the word. And out of that desperation or anxiety about that, I think people are making work just to keep their face out there. Mm-hmm. And I relate deeply to that anxiety, but I do despair a bit about the amount of quickly thrown together online crap.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, our
It's
work
a
takes
strong
time.
temptation, but
Takes time.
Yeah,
There are no shortcuts, and
no,
there's a lot of stuff being thrown up, as well as these videos of pieces with like that were really just documents of the work with like 2 cameras, shit far away that people are supposed to watch in replacement of being in the room with the piece. You know, that beautiful triangle of the piece and the audience and the artist, and that interaction. I think that's, I don't mean to speak for you, Pavol, but what you were afraid of losing.
yeah, you can
You
speak
know,
for me.
yeah, thanks. Okay.
I totally agree, and I guess I initiated this little beat, but at the same time, there's a few incredible opportunities viewing-wise I experienced. So I have to mention that as well, which is that, for example, Mabu Minds, because of, you know, a lot of people are posting things from their archives, and Mabu Minds posted an incredibly compromised, of course, because of the technology, but from 1975, a performance by David Warlow, directed by Lee Brewer, of the Beckett prose piece, The Lost Ones. And for as compromised as it is, David Warlow's no longer alive. You know, there's so much, it's a piece that I saw live at the Public Theater in '76. It was life-changing for me. So I don't know, when I watch it, I see that the video is barely even viewable, and maybe it's only if you've seen it live, but the fact that there's an opportunity to see that piece, I can't recommend it enough. And the things that the Worcester Group is posting. So this thing of bringing things out of the archive, given that it's, you know, it is video, but it's also a bit of an opportunity to look back at these archival things that are kind of amazing to the extent that you can kind of imagine what it maybe was live.
Yeah, and I think whatever you were saying, Paul, about like people trying to keep their kind of face out there, to keep some kind of like keep the idea of the virtual store still being open.
Right.
I think maybe in New York and stuff that panic is even heightened also by the fact that, you know, everybody's backup job, or the thing that I used to say is like, you know, if I stop being able to make a buck with theater, I can still like wait tables. And now, of course, that's also gone. And so
Right.
the level of panic here in New York, I think, is especially acute.
Really good point.
Because of that. But, you know, in a weird flip side of that is like, now that everybody's day job is gone, I really like the fact that, you know, you kind of have this resurgence of boredom, because there's only so much like social media crap that you can do in a day. And so people are reading books, or like, you know, there's a friend of mine that, you know, was working at a coffee place, like, you know, 40 hours plus a week. And now all of a sudden he's drawing all of these amazing things. And I see his drawings again, and people are like doing stuff like sculpture, and, you know, they're finding ways to be creative again, because they've actually been given their time back. And we all have this kind of like, you have that moment where it's like, well, what do I want to do creatively that we haven't, because we're all on this kind of treadmill all the time. Even if you are able to do your art for pay, you know, you still like, you end up chasing like the next job instead of maybe what you would most passionately care about. So I appreciate that too.
But there's also a provisional nature to it, that you don't have to, that there's an excuse. It's almost like it's a holiday. So the excuse is that it doesn't really have to be good as long as it's something. It doesn't have to be rigorous. I just have to respond somehow, just to make sure that everybody knows that I'm around and I'm important, and I have something to say, rather than just a time to reflect, or just to pull back and actually pay attention and let the world feed. You know, I'm just mainly worried about, like, once we do start rehearsing or working with people, how is that going to change? How is this going to change the dynamic of what can you ask people to do? Is close contact with, you know, is contact improv even going to be illegal?
Maybe it's for the best if it's not.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. But any kind of, you know, do we have to rehearse with masks? Are actors even going to be willing to rehearse? Are you putting actors at risk by making them get close to other people, other actors? You know, do you have to ask for written permission, for consent? We need consent forms to ask someone to stand next to each other.
Or even like going out into the audience, like having actors touch audience members is also going to be, I think, a big, you know, the people who can't consent that you attack with the.
Yeah, the splash zone has to be shorter.
Yeah, it will be, I think there will be a dramatic consequence. If I understand right, Germany just announced till the summer of next year, there will be no big mass spectacles, soccer games or others. So I guess what will happen to opera houses and theaters, that's, you know, also so many people get together, will it be a year without this? What will it also mean in New York for the commercial theater? So much of New York's theater is commercial only. To make money is not being supported. So of course it's being taken away, the idea. So will people then stop doing theater, and will the people like you guys who make theater because out of a vision, out of a love, out of a commitment, and because you have to, you know, will be the ones perhaps doing the theater, and the circumstances you already have done it in smaller spaces with small audiences. Do you feel something is changing in your, or is it still too early, but do you feel in your work, in your thinking about work, something is turning? Or is it more, as you always said, well, it's more or less, it feels the same as it was before, just it's a bit uncertain? Or do you feel also the engagement now with the world, what you hear, what you listen, do you feel there is a reformatting of the internal hard drive?
Yeah, I feel like we were already on the edge of something like this because we had been making like film, also live work, but like the film in a perverse way, like made the desire to make live work even more urgent. And then this happened. So then live work is not even possible anymore. And, you know, hugging a friend is not even possible anymore. So it makes all of that, you know, it makes you think about, well, what is the essential thing about the work that you make, and it's time and people and space, and all of those things are like gathering people together is never, it's like totally impossible. So if that's the essential, like for me, that is the essential part of the live work. Like if you can't gather people together, this disappears. So that makes me want to do it more. But it also like it cuts away all of the other aspects. Like I guess when we were talking about the German theater about that's commissioning the next work, you know, the question was, if we can't manage to raise the money that we need to do this, will we do it anyway? And it's like, as long as we can pay the people, we'll just do it in our t-shirts and with no set, you know, like that's the inessential part that we can cut away. So it forces you to think about what it is that you do and what do you need to do it.
I do agree that the subject matter that we're being forced to confront was in the consciousness prior to the pandemic. I mean, I had this freaky experience, which is the biggest gig that for me that was canceled was directing Macbeth, and it was going to be in Australia. And I was rehearsing it here in New York, and the thing takes place in a basement. And the beginning of the piece, the person who plays Macbeth enters from the outside world. We started working on this few months, 4 or 5 months ago. So we said he should be in a hazmat suit coming in from the outside world, because we should presume that the world outside of this basement where this takes place is no longer habitable. So now this happens, and that production is postponed, but I can't do the hazmat suit if it ever happens, because now that's what the audience is going to be wearing or something. So I started thinking, well, what would an Elizabethan hazmat suit be? So, but anyway, so I guess that's by way of saying it's, you know, this is more the culmination or a first manifestation, perhaps, of something that's very in our consciousness. I mean, I often think, or it's gone through my mind a few times, that this interlude is like a kiss on the cheek compared to the way it's going to manifest when global warming finally comes to full fruition. It won't be so enjoyably discrete from the bulk of the population. It'll be what's happening to the worst of us will be happening to all of us. So it's already part of the dark, painful, maddening cultural conversation.
Yeah. So do we, in case it goes on with theater, should we then do different work than we have done before? Have we been ready for this kind of situation, what we are in or what we might be facing?
I mean, I guess we've, as Paul said about the hazmat suit, and in some ways, I feel like we've been intuiting. I mean, I had, you know, just piggybacking, just separately had about 6 months ago ordered a mask from Japan that was flowers to match the dress of the costume, because I wanted my dancers to wear matching masks and dresses. But I wasn't like thinking, oh, this is gonna, like, Corona's coming. It's just, there's a feeling, you know, this has just been in the air.
So to speak.
So to speak.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we can't gather in a room together to make things, and we can't gather in a room to watch things, the idea that we're then reduced to computer screens and technology, it seems, I like better Pavel's idea of doing illicit theater in somebody's basement and not being, you know, than just giving up everything to the screen world.
Because there's so many people who have already been doing internet art, and they're so much better than us. We're just abysmal amateurs at it, and probably what theater people are putting on the internet is abysmally
Laughable.
amateurish. And you know, there's experts who know how to do it, and who have put in years since the beginning of, just as we have put in years in exploring this art form, and should continue to really work within the limitations and figure it out. You know, what is available, and then work with that. And
yeah, I think that. Sorry, no,
no, you're my dad, so you have to. I mean, you should jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the audience, the Hell Around audience knows that, but Pavol is my son.
It's true.
And I'm very proud of him most of the time. But I do think that, as Annie said at the very beginning, playing with proximity in live space, in three-dimensional world is a constraint, but it isn't a eradication. In other words, I remember seeing when I was, I don't know, Pavel's age, seeing Bread and Puppet Theater in Glover, Vermont, and this incredible image of these people about a quarter mile away, coming very, very slowly toward the audience. Now, the audience could have all been standing, we were probably standing a little bit closer together, but that's an example that already has happened in theater history of people playing with proximity within the constraints of 6 foot distance. So it's the new constraint. It's the form, it's the sonnet, it's the rules of the sonnet, or whatever you want to, thing of form you want to analogize. But anyway, and I think it's always exciting when there's a constraint. So I think it's a possibility. There's possibility and promise with saying we've got to stand, we got to be outdoors and we got to be more than 6 feet away. That doesn't mean we all just go home and stop making theater. We just live within that. Piece of cake.
Yeah, I mean, there's also the famous TV show 6 Feet Under, which of course refers to the 6 feet distance, of the dead towards the surface to be safe. And how is it for you? Do you think for next year, let's say pretend this will be going on till the end of the year, distancing, or even to the summer? Do you have work schedule? How is that for you? How will you survive? Is there a support system in New York City you feel that is there for you?
Not really in New York, I don't think. I think for us the situation doesn't change that much because we've never really received any support from the States anyway. And
you were in the Burgtheater Vienna, but you will not get a tiny space in New York. No one produces you. Yeah,
and we didn't even ask for. We're doing a show in Frankfurt in January 2000 next year, and we didn't ask them, but they wrote us like, how are you guys doing? Can we send you some money? Which was so kind and unheard of. People, we've never really that somebody from a theater is really worried about the artists and understands that pretty much all our work has been canceled. We had some teaching gigs and touring, and that was canceled until the beginning of the year. So. And
also, all your teaching gigs have all been canceled by universities.
Yeah. And so when we have rehearsals that we're supposed to do here in the summer. 2 of the performers are from Europe. We have no idea if they'll be able to get here, but we are, we can do it with the 3 people that are in New York, and then somehow teach it. We always work with the limitations. That's always been our modus operandi, and I'm sure that we will figure it out. And the theater in Germany is assuring us that they're doing everything to make sure that this happens. It's important to them that they keep doing what they know how to do best, and of course we've assured them that we will also do what we know how to do best, and that we've worked for 15 years for no money with so we will continue. If the Broadway theaters don't open, who cares? If the state-supported theaters don't open, it's we have done it with nothing because we have to do it. This is what we do. This is who we are. None of us have gotten into this because it's a lucrative profession, or it's not it's a passion, and we feel lucky if somebody gives us money, but if they don't, we're still doing it, and we still will continue to do it, as much as we grumble about what an awful art form it is. It's still something that we do, and we'll probably keep doing it until the day we die of corona next year, but that's fine too. I just think that somehow right now we're holding on to life so rapidly, but I wonder if there will come a time when this kind of life will just become unlivable anyway. So we'll just all say, fuck it, let's just start hugging each other and making out on the street and passing the corona to each other, and it doesn't matter, because the being locked up inside and being 6 feet apart from each other just makes no sense, and it's just pointless anyway. So I count on being able to find a small group of actors who are willing to risk their lives, and I count on 15 audience members who are willing to risk their lives, and let's just get in the room and infect each other with energy and electricity. And if some corona slips out of any one of us into somebody else, then we'll just die knowing that it was all worth it, and we did it not alone in a room, but together with 20 other people inside during a performance. I mean, I know it sounds romantic, maybe, but I mean, I don't know.
Also nihilistic.
I don't want to. No, I mean, I don't want to live that. I don't want to. I guess I don't value life that much to prolong it unnecessarily in a prison cell. It's just about like we're all being confined to a life sentence inside our own cells. Sure, we have our books and we have our for the most part our favorite food, but for how long do we survive in our separate rooms?
Paul, you.
I happened to go to a play the night before everything ended, so to speak. And it was the Lucas Hnath piece, which is called Dana H., which is a monologue of Lucas, a tape. It's actually a tape recording of Lucas Hnath's mother speaking about the 2 years that she was kidnapped. And it's a tape of her, and the great actress Dee Dee O'Connell is lip syncing Dana H. Is lip syncing Lucas's mother. Anyway, that's the form of it. And she tells this remarkable story, and it's an incredible piece of theater. And the last part of it is Lucas's mother voice, as I say, dubbed by Dee Dee, talking about her work as a hospice worker, which is something she's done a lot of her life and done it very well, and talking about how she helps people across the border from life beyond to the beyond. And her method of doing that, she was very good at talking people into letting go. And I'm sitting there, and it's a brilliant piece of theater. It's a brilliant, I mean, Dee Dee's brilliant in Lucas Hnath. I mean, it was, and this is the subject matter of the last play I ever saw. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking, and I thought, well, that's totally cool. I mean, that's completely right. The subject's right. The way it's being performed is right. And if this is in fact the last piece of theater I ever see, it'll be entirely right. Or as the gurus say, you know, everything is perfect.
But everything's not perfect.
There's another.
I mean, it depends how dystopian you want to go. But I guess the plague ended. I mean, I think it's going to end, and I think it's going to end much later than, you know, I mean, I echo a lot of what Pavel's saying about questions about cancellation versus postponement come up in my mind when I hear our gigs being moved. And I guess the presenters have a surprising amount of gratitude and respect right now around trying to make everything work and push things ahead, but we have no idea how far ahead these things are actually being pushed. You know, we're only officially canceled our rehearsals, and we also have people coming from Europe. So there's that X factor, but we're only really officially canceled through the end of May when we had our Walker residency canceled. But we all know that, you know, there's a lot more cancellations to come, and it's just a shit show of rescheduling in the future. So I just really hope that I get to make the piece I'm in the middle of making.
Yeah,
that's my modest hope.
Yeah, it's somehow also a feeling, especially then I think in New York, of kind of an end of times. We spoke yesterday to Black Fast, you know, the playwrights group, and they said, Dennis Allen said, my family is making last wills. You know, so much of us work in the service industry, so many friends work, you know, in there, and they all live together, work together, multi-generations. He said this has been going on for hundreds of years. We are affected by it. And he says, yeah, we don't have health insurance, we don't have the job. What are we supposed to do? And it's crucial, you know, that they think about survival first. And it's Arcturian times in a way, what Pavel said, you know, almost like this signaling through the flames. And we all have to stay on the right side of madness in this time. We do live on, we had Aristide Tanin from Burkina Faso, who said 400,000 people die of malaria each year in Africa. They don't even have the money for measles vaccination, malaria vaccination. This is our daily life, you know, as Paul said, this is what the planet is experiencing. Something is deeply wrong, and we have to all work and say things have to change. We have to be part of the change. Ostermeyer, which was interesting, also said, you know, let's not read any meaning into it. It's chaotic. It makes no sense. It will be over. Let's prepare for the fight afterwards. You know, that will come for everybody. And also the colleagues from Hong Kong who said, you know, this is over. It's not over for us when this is over, you know, so who often have basement performances, or the Lebanese artist Zahar, who said, we are already forced to perform in basements. We already can't announce what we are doing. It's risky to put people in. Now they have that on top of it. And so it's a hard time to think about theater. But if you could give some advice, I don't know. We all don't know what's going on, but still, as an artist and people who really have experienced and shared experiences through your work, you know, your great work, which was formerly so innovative and broke so many rules, and now we might have to also find new innovations, or maybe it has to become more political, who knows. But what would you say to people now who are like you, listening perhaps also in their rooms as audience members now, but also as young artists or mid-career artists or artists who have also already accomplished a lot? What would you say to them, to what to do, what to think about?
Just not be scared. You know, I always, if you have to do it, or don't do it if you don't have to do it. Do it if you have to do it. If you're compelled to do it, there's nothing that should stop you from not doing it. And you know, I always find inspiration from the communist, from the dissidents that continued to make work under threat of arrest in, you know, the communist regime. That's why I got into making art because I felt like those people survived and they continued to make work in their apartments and find ways to make the work necessary and relevant. It doesn't mean that every project now has to be about some kind of science fiction virus, or that Paul, you should definitely not use the hazmat suit, because you should use the opposite. You should have somebody come in with in a bikini,
Naked, yeah.
yeah, and bring beautiful flowers and show how beautiful and perfect the world is outside, while in the theater it's broken. Just I think that the sense, even when world was falling apart for, let's say, the dissidents in the communist country, when people were dying and being sent to the gulag or anything, there was also a humor that survived. Maybe it's gallows humor or black humor or whatever one calls it, that it doesn't disappear, so that we don't all of a sudden, all of us have to eliminate any kind of humor from the work, because then someone may accuse us that we're not taking this seriously. I think we're all serious artists and we all take the situation seriously, but humor is one of the tools that we have to deal with any kind of tragedy, and it's cathartic, but it generally puts you in danger of being either dismissed or make people think that you're not taking suffering or pain or tragedy seriously. But there have been many great artists in history who have used humor as a way of dealing with this, whether it's Cervantes or Gogol or any people, any number of people that,
Annie, what do you think?
I think that I love that, and I think that if you're a person who, I'm just going to say a choreographer, but done, I mean, just on a practical level, you can still, play your scales. You have to. When you're a choreographer, you have to work on your craft all the time, not just when you're in the room with the dancers. So you can work on choreography every single day. You can make material. Your duets and trios and stuff can be with objects or with the space or the floor. You can rethink the body and space over and over and over again in an interior way or outside or whatever. It's not that you get a break, you don't. You still have to work and figure out how to deepen your craft, even if you don't get to be in rehearsal. So, I mean, that would be my advice, is just to keep at it.
Yeah. Paul, what do you?
Which is that if you're asking yourself that question, which is a very legitimate question, just for the time of the quarantine, you are in a very lucky position, because the stratification of different assignments here in society now are more vivid than they were before. So while we're posing this very legitimate question, there are people working 12 to 15 to 20-hour shifts trying to keep people alive that are at the max in these hospitals. So if you have the elbow room to even ask, to contemplate the question, use some of that time to do something on behalf of those forces that are right here in Brooklyn, that are really stressed to the max. Which isn't to say, throw your artistic practice in the garbage and go buy groceries for seniors and do nothing else. I don't think it needs to be quite so dogmatic and absolute as that. But I do think we have an imposed unique amount. The thing we have, those of us that aren't working at the hospital, is a little more time. So use some of that extra time to help those people, you know, whether it's, you know, getting online and, you know, you can call, you know, there's stuff.
There's stuff one can do so to be useful. And
that's a thought, you know.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. And Kelly,
but
is
that's
coming to the
saying
end of the time.
That what we do is useless. We don't want to say what we do is useless.
No.
Or that is the last, or that is the last thing that we should be doing or worrying about.
I don't follow.
Kelly, what's your take on it?
Oh, with these things, you know, like I just keep remembering like that back when 9/11 happened, Pavol and I weren't making theater. And there was something about that time, you know, like I lost my job and you're suddenly forced to slow everything down and shift your priorities and shift your thinking. And then that's when the commitment really came to start making live art, and it changed our practice, you know. So I think the more that you can think of these inevitable positions that you're put in are somehow useful and a chance to slow down and dig deep and recommit and redefine what's important about what you do, the better, the more we can actually take advantage of what we do have. Because what we do have is a lot of time.
Like these beautiful Japanese haikus, when your roof is broken, you can actually see the moon if you do look.
Yeah.
And, it might be cold, but you do, it might be raining on you. So I think, I wish we could go on and we just scratch the surface of it, but over 1 hour. And maybe we check in again if this lasts longer and can see how we all look like later on, a month or 2 or 3 later. And yeah, and so let's hope you all can join in tomorrow. We have Melanie Joseph, you know, the great founder of the Foundry Theater, together with Aaron Lensman and Orange Squire will talk about their work. Melanie will also talk about her project to finance ways to find ways. I know Malika Gantner is putting things together, and of course, Taylor Mack and Kristen do the Trickle Up New York NYC. .org, and to find some ways, and we also hopefully will hear from all of them, but it will be great to hear from Melanie, who always in a way has also represented a social and political conscience, you know, of our community. We hear from Shahid Nadeem from Pakistan, and then also from India, from Abhishek, and the great puppeteer, a woman who will join us for the talk. So please do stay with us, stay safe. Do stay tuned also for other. And thank you all for taking your time.
Thank you, Frank.
Frank,
I hope you will stay. And I hope you will stay.
Thank you for initiating this. I think it's really cool.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. And whatever you guys say really does. Really, really true. So thank you. And stay safe, and you and your love.